Well, it's that time of year again. You know, the end of it. 2023 is coming to a close, and with it comes reflection and reminiscence and other words that start with the letter R. It's the time when everybody asks themselves the question, what were the top 10 games of the year? I don't like that, because frankly, there were more than 10 good games that came out this year. There were more than 10 great games that came out this year. I genuinely cannot remember a year with this many exceptional, groundbreaking, genre-defining games. They all came out in the span of like a few months. It's genuinely insane. So I don't want to talk about just 10 games in this video. I want to talk about every single game that came out in 2023 that I played. Okay, so that's a big one. That's a big premise to just throw onto you. So let's lay out some ground rules. I am only talking about games that I personally played this year. Simply put, there were too many good games for only one person to play this year. And I am only one person. So sorry if your favorite game from this year does not show up on this video. It's not because I hated it, probably. It's more likely because I just genuinely didn't get around to it or didn't know it existed. So if that happens, please genuinely talk about it in the comments. I don't want anyone to feel left out of this conversation just because I happen to not play the video game. I want this to be a celebration of all the good games that came out this year, and talking about it with other people is part of that celebration, so genuinely. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. I guess there's no better place to start than the beginning. Honestly, 2023 started out just like any other year, frankly. There were games I knew about, there were games I was excited about, there were games that I wanted to see, but I don't think there was anything that could have prepared anybody for the surprise that was Hi-Fi Rush, a game that was announced on January 25th and then released the same fucking day. This made an immediate impression on the entire gaming industry. It was so full of confidence in itself, in its art style, in its central mechanic. It is an action game where everything actually syncs up to the music playing in the background. Your attacks, the enemies, the timing for you to dodge, jumping, the environment itself, it all reacts to the music playing in the background, and it is spectacular. I cannot express through sheer video how satisfying it is to just play this game, feel the groove of the excellent soundtrack, and then just have fun beating up robots. It is genuinely fantastic, and it comes with a genuinely really well presented game as well. The art style is really well done. It has exceptional animation going for it. The characters themselves are also really fun to look at and watch and hear. I genuinely really respect the commitment to making the main character an absolute dumbass. The goals of the protagonist line up exactly with the player. He doesn't care about the actual overarching story or anything or what anyone tells him to. He just wants to have fun with the combat and the music and all that. And it lines up with the player, because I also couldn't give a shit about anything else that was going on in this game. But the combat, genuinely, it is so well done and so well animated. This is just not a game that you see nowadays. This game feels like it is a dream come true. And frankly, if it came out in literally any other year, this would have instantly become the game of the year. This is so unique and so fun that there's no way anything else could top it. Except a lot of games topped it, starting with Pizza Tower. This came out, by the way, like a day later, I'm pretty sure. This is a game that was around for a bit. It had some early access builds of it that were publicly available. I just didn't know about it until like a little bit after it came out. I just started hearing about this random ass Wario Land style platformer, and I didn't really understand what everyone was talking about until I looked at the game for like 2 seconds, and I instantly understood it, because oh my god, this game is so goddamn good. It may be the best 2D platform ever made. I feel confident saying that, honestly. It is a extremely fast-paced, just rushing through the entire level super quickly, bursting through every enemy and obstacle, and it just feels so good. Again, just like Hi-Fi Rush, it has a super unique art style, very reminiscent of 90s Nicktoons or Cartoon Network, whatever. and it's a genuine treat. Even though it kind of looks like shit, I cannot imagine the amount of effort into making it look this kind of shit. It's genuinely beautiful, and it's just a really fun game. It has that feel. Personally, I don't like 2D platformers that are more focused on the level design, even though obviously that's very important. But I like the actual act of running around and jumping to be fun in a 2D platformer, and not a lot of games do that. Pizza Tower is one that does do that, and it does it exceptionally well. It is a relatively simple moveset that he has, but it's just so much fun to play the video game. I cannot stress that enough. It's just fun to play. The music is also incredible, by the way. This is a trend for this year that started with Hi-Fi Rush, but also continues to every game ever. The music from most games that came out this year is genuinely phenomenal. This is probably the best year for gaming music that we've had since like the Genesis or something. I don't even know. And yeah, Pizza Tower might actually have the best soundtrack, honestly. Just the one like main theme of running away from the pizza face guy. It's so good. It's named after a fucking Spider-Man 2 meme, and I can't get over it. For what this game is, it honestly is probably a 10 out of 10 video game. And it's not even the game I was most excited about this year, because again, very, very quickly, this all happened in the span of like 3 days. I got blindsided by Hi-Fi Rush and Pizza Tower, but the game I was looking forward to, which came out the very next day, also blew me away. It's the Dead Space remake. Now, Dead Space is a game that I honestly didn't think needed a remake. To this day, I still kind of think it could have gone very poorly, because Dead Space, the original game on Xbox 360, it holds up really well, to the point that a remake genuinely isn't necessary, and it wasn't necessary, but oh my god, it was still so good. I can't get over. I can't get over this year, how good this year was. But Dead Space Remake specifically, first of all, it's beautiful. I don't think I can even overstate that fact. It is such a well recreated, is that a word? I don't think it is, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's such a good recreation of the Ishimura and all like the art style of that whole first game. There's a couple things that I'm not absolutely huge on, but it just looks incredible from top to bottom, honestly. This is one of those weird times where the enhanced fidelity of the visuals actually improves the gameplay, because you can actually see, as you shoot the necromorphs, you can see the muscle and the tissue and the bone as you cut deeper and deeper into the limbs until they eventually come off. There are weapons that forcefully tear all of the skin and sometimes all of the muscle off of the enemy, to the point that you're just left with a big bloody skeleton slowly walking towards you. It's phenomenal stuff, and actually helps gauge how much damage you've done to an enemy. It genuinely, it helps the gameplay in a way that I don't think many other games would from a remake. And that's not even the coolest part. The game is, for the most part, a pretty faithful remake, but it adds a lot of tiny new things that really enhance the experience. They've turned the Ishimura into a full open-ended, not open-ended, but like interconnected level. You can walk from one end of the ship to the other in one seamless motion, and it is incredible. The original tram from the original game is still there. It acts as fast travel, but still, the effect of walking from level to level instead of just waiting for a loading screen in between, it really adds so much to the survival horror nature of the game. Gameplay wise, it's mostly the same, but it does add enough. It adds the refinement that that Dead Space 2 specifically added to the gameplay, because that's the one thing about Dead Space 1. It looks incredible, but it does feel slightly janky to just walk around in, and the aiming and such. The remake completely fixes all of that. It makes all of the guns better, except for like maybe the assault rifle. The sound on that one's not quite there, but it made every weapon super fun to use. My surprise winner was the flamethrower. It was so much fun to burn the necromorphs, watch the skin melt off, and then because of that, it actually made other weapons more effective because all the skin was already gone. So they had an easier time getting through to the bone. I love that. I love that concept, and it made me so happy to play. They even made some very slight story adjustments. It's still mostly the exact same story, but I'm not going to talk about them specifically, but the little things that they added and changed for this remake, they just make it a better story. Even if some of the performances are maybe a little bit worse, the story just is flat out better in my opinion, especially with now that Isaac is voiced. He has his voice from Dead Space 2 and 3. It makes this honestly, I think this is really the definitive version of Dead Space. I don't think there's any real reason to go back to the original, in my opinion. It's incredibly rare for me to see a remake as a genuine replacement for the original, but that's how I see Dead Space. It is that good of a remake. It knows exactly what worked about the original and only adds or changes things for the better to preserve that original feeling and concept, but make it better. That's really all I can say about it. And then that's mostly it for January. An incredible 1-2-3 punch from the industry at large. But there is one more game that means more to me than it might for most other people, and that is SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake. This is a sort of sequel / spiritual successor to the old Battle for Bikini Bottom games, which if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that I like those games a lot. And yep, it's a sequel. It is listen, I was always going to like this game. There is literally no way I wouldn't like it, but it's also just a genuinely good 3D platformer. It's not amazing or anything. This game doesn't have that many unique or interesting ideas, but it does just feel fun. Again, it's that feel that I really value in platformers. This game, first of all, the animation is actually really good in this game. I was not expecting that. The Battle for Bikini Bottom remake didn't look that good in retrospect. At least the animations, it looked fine, but the animations were a little janky in some places. The animations in Cosmic Shake, on the other hand, are really good, actually. They, this is almost to the same level as the theatrical movies for SpongeBob. The game just looks really good, both in cutscenes and in gameplay, and that increased animation quality does translate to the gameplay. The game feels more fun than the other games, specifically because there's also a couple new moves. I like the cartwheel dodge thingy. I think that is kind of fun. But mainly, honestly, the main thing that made the game really fun for me was the homing attack, which is insane that they decided to put the homing attack in a SpongeBob video game. But it's genuinely it felt really good for me for some reason. It just felt really fun to homing attack an enemy, then do a ground pound, then do a dodge roll into a spin, and then jump, and then do another homing attack halfway across the level. It genuinely was it's a really fun gameplay rhythm, and it just feels and looks... It just looks like SpongeBob. I can't get over that. There is always going to be a level of separation between me being able to criticize this game and my love for the source material. I'm not going to pretend this is an unbiased review of the game. It is definitely not. It delivered on a promise that I will probably never forget, honestly. If this was the last SpongeBob game to ever come out, I would be pretty satisfied with it. It feels like the end of a long-lasting saga, which feels weird to say because it's just another SpongeBob game, but that's just kind of how it works in my brain. I don't know. So that's how the last week of January went for me. A back-to-back triple KO of infinitely impressive games, followed by a SpongeBob game, which I had more fun with than all of them. So that was the sign, especially when Hi-Fi Rush got announced and then released and then was so fun and unique. That was when I knew that 2023 was going to be different. It was not just going to be another year for games, it was going to be an extraordinary one. And I didn't know how right I was until much later in the year. Now is probably a good time to bring up ports and remasters, because there were a lot of really good ones this year that it would feel weird to not mention. I'm categorizing these ones differently from the full-on remakes, like the Dead Space remake and the future games that I'll be talking about later. But where the Dead Space remake was a full-on changing of content and adding new content in order to enhance the experience, these ports ports and remasters are basically the same video game. Maybe they look better, maybe they play nicer, but for the most part, they are the exact same game. That's how I'm categorizing them differently. Trust me, if you just play remasters and remakes, they feel different. Just trust me on this one. I know what I'm talking about. First up, we got Metroid Prime Remastered, I believe. This was another game that Nintendo did this a lot, actually. They just shadow dropped whole ass games. And yeah, this was a heck of a game to do that with, because Metroid Prime is like, I don't understand why. It's one of the most like highly reviewed games of all time. And I've played it. It's a pretty good game. I don't know if I would say it's one of the best games of all time, but it is a really good game. It's, for what it is, it's a really cool reimagining of the Metroid series, and the remaster specifically looks really nice. It's maybe one of the better looking games on the Switch, funnily enough. Speaking of which, we have Pikmin 1+2. Now, I'm going to be talking about Pikmin later for probably way too long. But the Pikmin 1 and 2 ports, while not as graphically impressive as the Metroid Prime remaster was, they were still they were really good. It's Pikmin 1 and 2. I love Pikmin more than most things, so it's an instant winner for me. But no, it's a good port. It adds some new control options and stuff, and fixes some of the bugs from the original games, while mostly feeling the same. It's Pikmin 1 and 2 again, and I could not be happier. Next up, Dokapon Kingdom Connect. This is a port of a Wii game, I believe. It's like a PS2 Wii game of a series that's mostly only known in Japan, but they had one game on the Wii in America and no one bought it. But they brought it back for a modern day, and it's basically the same game as Dokapon Kingdom on the Wii, but with the major addition of online multiplayer, which, oh my god, now I can finally hate my friends digitally instead of in real life. In case you never played Dokapon Kingdom, since it's kind of an obscure game, it is Mario Party, but an RPG. It's also Mario Party, but you'll hate your friends. The game will tear you apart. It will make you hate everything. But it also gives you the validation of everyone else having an equally horrible time. It's genuinely one of the most fun and unique multiplayer games I've ever played. I highly recommend it. Another Japanese game, actually most of these are mostly Japanese now that I'm looking at it, but Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. I played a little bit of it on the DS back in the day. But this is a new PC console port of that game. It's just a good visual novel puzzle game where you mess around with time travel and manipulating things as a ghost, and it's fun. It's very unique. It has a very unique aesthetic, and I would highly recommend that as well. Last one I'm going to talk about today is Super Mario RPG. I know it's technically a full-on remake, but it's basically the same game. But it is Super Mario RPG, and it is the same game, and people really like that same game. I actually haven't played this one, but I'm breaking my rule. I'm just gonna kind of assume that all the good things I've heard about this game are true and not fiction. So that's that. After that insane last week of January, where at least 3 genuine Game of the Year contenders released right after each other, the year took a small break, but not a huge one. It slowed down, but didn't stop. We had in February at least one really good game. Sorry We're Open, an Earthbound-esque RPG set in a haunted supermarket, also known as Hell. You play as a retail worker having to go through retail worker things with a touch of dark humor and horror thrown into the mix. It's very eerie. It's very I wouldn't say it's exactly scary, but it's got a very good horror vibe to it that I really like. It's also pretty funny. It's got, if you've ever worked retail, you will immediately understand a lot of the jokes and references in this game. It's very much that, yeah. The most interesting thing about this game, though, to me, the thing that genuinely makes it stand out so much, apart from it just being kind of cool and kind of funny, the combat of the game, the turn-based combat, is resource-based. Literally every single action you take in combat has some sort of cost. Your basic attack for all of the people in your party take health away from the main character, and if the main character dies, then you get a game over. To counter this, you can use not basic attacks, you can use their skills, but skills cost money. There's also other things thrown into the mix, like you can have another employee quit on the spot, which will will kill them in the game, but it will give every other person on your party an insane health boost, which is very true to real life, but also very interesting in a tactical sort of way. It's a game that makes you take into that mindset, like a corporate mindset. It makes you view the rest of your teammates as expendable, and it makes you, I'll just say it fits the retail aesthetic extremely well. So there's that. Next up, Barotrauma is a multiplayer game that finally came out this year. It was in early access for a long time, but it finished this year. And it's fun. I don't really got a huge amount to say for this one. It's just a good submarine simulator that you can play with friends. It's another kind of spooky game. I really do like the art style for it. There's a setting where you can have the possibility of a traitor in the group randomized, so there might be someone secretly trying to kill all of you, and there might not. That's a really cool idea. This is just a game I want to play more of. I haven't really gotten to play too much of this game, but it seems like a very good time. Next up, the only cool looking game from the 2021 Game of the Year awards. Man, that takes me back. It's Have a Nice Death. Does this game live up to the hype as being the only cool looking game from the 2021 Game Awards? Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a roguelite, and I'm not super huge on roguelites, truth be told. But from what I can tell, this is a pretty good one. It's very fun to play. The animation is so good in this game too. It's really good 2D animation. The whole art style, honestly, is really good. And I just like the whole aesthetic of the thing. The boss fights in that game are also really good. I really do like the boss fights, both how they're designed, how they look, how they talk, all that stuff. I think the game just has, really, it's a lot of style winning this game over for me, and that's totally okay. Indie games like that are a great way to hold you over for the big releases, and speaking of big releases, we have a game that I personally was indifferent to before the game came out, and then became incredibly excited coming up to its launch. Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, this game is in a very similar spot to the Dead Space remake in that I didn't think it was necessary at all. Even though Resident Evil 4 is older than Dead Space by quite a few years. In fact, Dead Space would not exist without Resident Evil 4. In fact, I think it's safe to say most shooters would not exist in the way they exist today without Resident Evil 4. The original game is one of the most timeless games of all time. I can testify to this. I played this game for the first time for this channel, and it instantly became one of my favorite games ever. I love the original to death, and I really did not think it needed a remake. It's so timeless, how could you improve upon it? And unlike the Dead Space remake, the Resident Evil 4 remake doesn't even try. It's not trying to replace the original like the Dead Space remake was. The Resident Evil 4 remake truly is its own thing, but I honestly don't think that makes it worse than the original. It takes the best parts, the most recognizable parts of the original game, and definitely modernizes them. This game definitely plays more like a modern third-person shooter than the original, at least. But to compensate for that, they have adjusted some things in the gameplay. The enemies are a little bit more aggressive, a lot faster in this game. I had a much more difficult time just getting enemies off my back than I did in the other game, which is weird, but it works with the game's faster paced. So does the changes with the knife. The knife no longer, well, how do I put this? You can parry in this game. They put a parry in Resident Evil 4 and somehow made it work. It genuinely feels really good. You can time it a little early to just give yourself some safety, but if you time it perfectly, you can then follow up with a roundhouse kick, and yeah, that feels really good to do. But to compensate for this increase in power, because if you took the original Resident Evil 4 and added a parry to it, it would make the game really freaking easy, because the game's not designed around it. So in the remake, they changed the knife. It has durability now. Again, I can't believe I just said that either. They added weapon durability to Resident Evil 4, and I'm not mad about it. It works really well in the remake for its specific terms. That's basically all I can say about the gameplay of Resident Evil 4 Remake. It looks like the original game on a surface level, but if you get into the details of the gameplay, they really are quite different. And I really appreciate that. It really isn't trying to replace the original in that regard. It really is doing its own thing. I do think I actually prefer the gameplay of original Resident Evil 4 to this remake. I think is a little bit more fun. It's not as stressful as the new one is, which works for the survival horror nature of it, you know what I mean? But in terms of story and characters and writing, however, oh boy, does the remake just knock it out of the park. I cannot believe how much I love the writing in this new version of the game. The story is mostly the exact same, but the way they've handled the characters and everything about them is just such a big improvement for me. Specifically, Leon and Ashley. There's so much, I mean, like, Leon was always really entertaining and Ashley was fine. But the remake really makes them a likable duo. They feel really good together, and when they're not together and it's just one of them by themselves, it feels like something's missing. They really do work well with each other. I need to give specific praise to Ashley in the remake, because in the original game, I thought she was fine. She works for the game, but at no point did I ever want her to come back into the series. Like, she works really well in that one specific game, but if she were to come back, it would be weird. It wouldn't work that well. But now, Resident Evil 4 Remake did something to me that I didn't think was possible. I really like Ashley in this game. She's genuinely like one of my favorite video game characters ever in this version. To the point that I'm genuinely quite sad that she's not in the rest of the series. I really wish she was in more of the series now. I would love to see more of this version of the character. Even if they created a whole brand new spin-off with her now, I really think I would get a huge kick out of that. So yeah, that's a Resident Evil 4 remake. It is exceptionally good. It's basically as good as the original, honestly. If you have not played it, or the original, I would recommend the original first before playing this, because it definitely, again, unlike Dead Space Remake, which could be played by itself and you would just get the same experience, this is a game that builds on the original. It plays around with your expectations, and it's an experience that is genuinely quite different if you have played the original. Of course, if you haven't, it's totally fine to play this version, but I would honestly recommend the original anyway, because that one's still really fun. But the remake is extremely good. It lives up to the standards made by the original game, and that is a hell of a feat. Alright, going from a game that was hugely inspired by Resident Evil 4, we have a game that was hugely inspired by Resident Evil 4. It's Dredge, a fishing simulator thing that's also a horror game, and it has Resident Evil 4 style inventory management. It's actually quite fun. But no, Dredge is quite a unique beast, and I choose those words very specifically. It's a good just Lovecraftian story, but it's also a really good fishing game. I really don't know how else to describe it. It does have quite a good horror aesthetic. It genuinely is quite scary to venture out into the darkness at night, because you have to. And you really never know what you might see out there. The game will constantly pull tricks on you, make you see things in the corner of your eye in the darkness, make you question what's real and what's not. And then you'll play a fun fishing minigame, and then you'll stare at your inventory for a few minutes trying to figure out how to make the damn fish fit in there. At its core, it's honestly a very simple game. There's not much I can say about it, but it does what it does really well, and I do think it is worth checking out. Next up is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now this game is coming with a caveat that it runs like ass. It is it's not a good PC port apparently, and most of the console versions aren't good. Basically, only buy this game if you have a PS5. Now, if you do have a PS5, or by some miracle you get the game working on your PC, the game is really fun. I really liked the first Jedi game. What was it? Jedi Fallen Order? I really enjoyed that game a lot as a Star Wars fan, and this is just more of that. The game does look really good in this. Like, I was blown away by the intro and Coruscant. Like, it was one of the moments this year where I went, oh my god, this is the next generation of gaming. That's crazy. But no, I genuinely, I do like the game a lot. It's a good Dark Souls-like Metroidvania. It's actually, it might have one of the best maps of any game I've ever played. I really like the way the map is handled. It makes Metroidvania style exploration fun for me, someone who does not like Metroidvanias that much. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about it. Buyer beware for it, but you know, the game is fun when you get to play it. Next up, a Well, I don't really know how to describe this. The next game is Humanity, and it's kind of everything. I really don't know how to describe it. I mean, at its core, it is a puzzle game where it's like if you ever played the old game Lemmings. I haven't, but I know what it looks like, and it's basically that. You just, humans are trying to get through the afterlife, I think. And you gotta like direct them to the correct exit, and like it's actually pretty fun. The humans act more like a fluid in this game than you would expect. The game is very symbolic with how it handles the humans, because it's called Humanity, and I don't really know too much about that, but I do know that when I trapped a handful of humans in an endless loop to keep pressing a button while the rest of the humans could continue on to heaven, I did feel slightly bad about it. So, that's it. Also, they go off the cliff a lot. But other than that, it's fine. No, it's a fun puzzle game. I usually don't play that many puzzle games, but this one caught my eye, and I think it's pretty fun. Next up, System Shock Remake. Another remake. Huh, this really was the year of, like, horror remakes, huh? But, no, System Shock, now, this is a game that needed a remake. I absolutely love System Shock 1, but to put it kindly, System Shock Remake makes the game more accessible in that it doesn't control like a microwave anymore. It is one of the first immersive sims ever made. I'm pretty sure it is a really, really good kind of survival horror-ish. Also slightly Metroidvania-ish. You get new abilities like rocket skates and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. But no, this is a game with it has one of the best villains of any game I've ever played. Shodan is a incredibly fun antagonist. She is it's not just like a GLaDOS kind of thing where she's toying with you. Shodan is is Citadel Station. She is the everything in that game, and she knows it and she owns it, and it is so fun to hear her call me an insect, and I wish she would do it more often. Also, besides that, this is just a really well-made like resource management game. Every single victory you have in this game feels so good, and every loss you feels equally bad. It's a good remake. It's more faithful than I would have thought, to be honest. Like most of the enemies and weapons are the exact same. It's just the game no longer controls like a microwave, so it's fun now. But no, I would hugely recommend System Shock. Either version of it, to be honest. I think it's way better than System Shock 2, which usually gets all the praise for some reason. I mean, I get it, but like I don't get it. Alright, enough of shitting on whoa, that is a hard thing to say. Enough of shitting on System Shock 2. Alright, we got there. Next up, I hope this game's easy to pronounce. It is Slayers X Terminal Aftermath Vengeance of the Slayer. That title had 2 colons in it. No, I like this game a lot too, if you couldn't have guessed. This is a retro-inspired first-person shooter, very much like Duke Nukem, or something along those lines. It is a spin-off of Hypnospace Outlaw, and if you don't know what Hypnospace Outlaw is, just know it's one of my favorite video games of all time. I played it on the channel a while ago, and I could not believe how good it was. I fucking love that game. And this is a very fun in-universe spin-off of that. It's made by one of the characters from that game, and I loved every second of it. It's not super long. It's like 6 levels, I think. But it was quite a nice 6 levels. But to be serious for a second, it does have quite a few interesting ideas for a shooter of this type. I really like the shotgun in this game. I think it's called the Glass Blaster. And it uses broken glass as ammo, and there's quite a lot of windows and stuff, so at any point you can just go up to a window, break it, and then that broken window becomes ammo. It's a really nice way of encouraging you to interact and engage with the environment, and I really like that. That's actually like a super interesting idea. Less interesting, later in the game you get a big fuck off laser, and that just felt really good every time I used it. I really like that laser. Yeah, overall, it's not a super deep experience, but it's fun. It adds a lot of character to the guy it's based off of, and I got nothing but nice things to say about it. Next up, quite a big game we have here. This is Street Fighter 6. You've probably heard of it. Now, I'm not usually that big on fighting games, if I had to be honest with you. I like Smash Brothers. I like Smash Bros. Quite a bit. Never been huge on like actual fighting games though, and as someone who is not super well spoken with fighting games, Street Fighter 6 was really fun, actually. There was so much good going for this game. First of all, the characters and animation and the style this game gives is it's off the charts. This is, if among other things, this was a great year for style, and I really appreciate that. That goes for everything. That goes for the animations, and the soundtrack of this game is pretty darn good, as you would expect from Street Fighter. But also, all the characters are just really fun to look at, and I'm sure this is not the only fighting game that is that. But I actually got to play this one for a number of reasons. This game is really good for newcomers. They have a whole different moveset if you're not familiar with fighting games. It's called Modern, and it makes people online really mad, but for me it actually works quite well, even though I do tend to prefer the classic controls just for authenticity purposes. But no, it's a really good way to let people who maybe aren't super well versed with fighting games get in on the action. Same goes with the story, and usually people don't talk about the story in fighting games because it's a load of shit. But Street Fighter 6's story mode is not just a story mode. It is a whole ass open world RPG, similar to like something like Yakuza or something like that, and I could not believe what I saw when I was playing it. It's also really funny because it has that Santro 2 effect where you make a character and then that character is in the cutscenes, and you can make some fucking monsters in that character creator. I really like it. But the like, genuinely though, the single player part of this game could be its own video game. It is so crazy in depth. It's so good at helping a newcomer get into fighting games. It's good for that aspect, but it's also really fun if you are good at fighting games because you get to mix and match all the movesets from all the different characters, and then you get to make something that really feels like your own, and I really appreciate that, even though I'm not anywhere near good enough to take advantage of it. Yeah, I mean, it's Street Fighter, but it's also like probably the best starting place again to fighting games that's ever been made. Like, I don't think there's anywhere else you could even think about starting. This is just such a well-made game filled with so much love. Let's not get into the microtransactions and the cost for all like the character costumes stuff. Let's not talk about that. Let's move on to the next game. Next up, Amnesia the Bunker. Jesus Christ, this really was the year of survival horror, huh? I'm gonna take a guess and say Amnesia the Bunker is probably the scariest game that came out this year. It's not my favorite horror game of this year, not even really close, but it is really scary. And I cannot take that away from it. I've never really been a huge fan of the Amnesia games, but this leans way more into the survival horror aspect of it. You have a gun, but it's not even really that good at killing enemies. It's just good for scaring them away. But there's just something about that resource management aspect that I really like. I also like the whole setting of this game. It's set during World War One. I didn't realize that before going in, or World War, one of them. It's one of them. I know that much. And it's a really nice aesthetic. It really makes you feel oppressed in this bunker as you try to claw your way out of there, trying to get any advantage you can from the monster. I especially like the generator part of this game. There's only one place in the game you can save, and it's in like the center of the map, and you have to keep making explorations out and then back in order to gain any sort of progress. And something that keeps you coming back is the generator, which you can collect fuel for and then put in, and then you can turn it on for a set amount of time to give you lights for like a few minutes. And it really makes you stress because you don't want to run out of light. Yeah, it's just a really... I actually haven't played all that much of it because I'm just too scared to play it. That's how you know it's a good horror game. It's just good. It's more of an immersive sim than any other Amnesia game, honestly. There's like so many different decisions you can make for any option. To open a door, you can either blow it up with a grenade or find a heavy rock to break it open. But this is a game that has this aspect where every single choice you make has a reaction to it, and it has a bad side to it. You use a grenade to open this door, great. That just made a loud ass sound. The monster knows exactly where you are now. You better go fast. And the game is just really well made. It has a lot of those like resource decisions or trade-offs that really appeals to me. I really like this game, even though I'm probably never going to finish it because I'm just a fucking pussy. Oh man. Now I must confess that around the beginning of June or whatever, I stopped playing a lot of the games, mainly because I was just trying to save money for games I knew that I wanted. But there were a lot of specifically indie games that I never got around to, so just for this short little section, I want to give a shout out to a lot of indie games that I was not able to play, but I would really like to. Starting off with Trepang 2. This is a fear-inspired shooter, sequel to Trepang 1, if I had to guess. And it looks really fun. It looks like it has that same fear aspect to it, where it looks like a horror game, but really it's a John Wick simulator, and I really appreciate that. Next up, Dave the Diver. I'm gonna be honest, every time I hear someone say this is the best game of the year, I put off playing it by one more day. I'm sure it's really good, but it just kind of came out of nowhere this year. Everyone was saying it was really good, and I'm sure it is. I probably will get around to playing it at some point. But man, something about the reception this game got is like almost suspicious to me. Whatever. Anyway, next up, Oxenfree 2. This is a sequel to Oxenfree 1. I know nothing about the sequel, but I really liked Oxenfree 1. I think that game is actually a really good, not a walking simulator, but like a narrative focused game where you get, it's like a Telltale game, you get to like choose your dialogue and like it affects the story and all that. I really liked Oxenfree 1, so I'm hoping the second one is just as good. Next up, My Friendly Neighborhood. This is a Sesame Street inspired survival horror game. It kind of seems to me like it's almost taking a piss at the mascot horror genre, which I kind of hate. No, this game actually looks pretty fun. It looks very silly, but like in a good way. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a shooter where you get to shoot Elmo. I don't know. It's like, it looks fun to me. After that, Punch Club 2. Much like Oxenfree, I have no idea if the sequel is actually good, but I know that the first game was pretty darn good, and I'm glad a sequel got made. And finally, to round off this section, I gotta make sure I get the title right. Yeah, you want those games, right? So here you go. Now, let's see you clear them. I think that's... It looks to be a game just made up of all like the shitty phone, like mobile ads that you see of people like playing the game bad, like the super simple game bad on purpose to make you buy it. This is a game that's just a whole collection of them, and that's really funny to me. I think it's made by like the Katamari devs or some shit like that. Yep, it is. That by itself is reason enough to buy that game. I don't care. So, this is the moment that the entire year, at least for me, was leading up to. The release of the long-anticipated and rumored to be in development, Pikmin 4. And I got some things to say about this game, all of them good. In case you don't know, I really like Pikmin. I really like Pikmin. Pikmin is maybe my favorite, I say maybe, it's not maybe, it's definitely my favorite video game series of all time. I love all of the Pikmin games so freaking much, dude. You have no idea how much these games are so good. I can't believe I haven't talked about them more on this channel, honestly. And Pikmin 4, I've been waiting for this game to come out for like almost half of my lifetime. That's insane to think about. I was 13 when Pikmin 3 came out, and 10 years later, we finally got it, Pikmin 4. I have so many nice things to say about this game. It's Pikmin, but modernized and streamlined, which doesn't sound like a good thing, but it really captures that satisfying, like, collection aspect of that game. It's created a new title for this genre, the Dandori type game, and it really deserves to be that creator. It is finely tuned to a fine point. That's not how that saying goes, but I'm gonna keep it in anyway. It's just so good. There's so much charm. The game looks so good. It's also, I really appreciate that this game, it takes so much, it really takes all of like the good aspects of the other three Pikmin games and just takes all the good parts and puts them in one game. The main game is like Pikmin 2. You get to go in all the caves and they're really fun. I actually really like that they're not randomly generated in this game. Their design is set, and it means that they can get away with a lot more fun theming in this game than they could in the other one, the Pikmin 2. They got the Dandori challenges, which scratch that itch of the challenges from Pikmin 3. They are really addicting and fun in this game, and I cannot get enough of them. I really hope we get more DLC just to add more of those into the game. I will buy it in a heartbeat. And then, For the based Pikmin fan, the one that loves Pikmin 1 the most, the 30-day time limit, they even got you covered, because even though the main story doesn't have any time limit besides the overarching day, it has a side mode that I'm not going to spoil super hard, but it fulfills that niche of Pikmin 1. It gives you a certain amount of parts you have to collect in a set amount of time, and if you don't do it, you will fucking die. And that is the exact kind of shit I love in this game. And overall, this whole game, it's just a huge love letter to all of the Pikmin games. It brings back so many enemies from Pikmin 1 and 2 that haven't ever been brought into HD before, and I hugely appreciate that. The premise of the story, at first I wasn't huge on it, because it's kind of a reboot, it's kind of not. They're being very coy about exactly where this game sits in the timeline, whether it actually is a new game or a reset of the time. But either way, I really like how they handled the story. I love the writing. Olimar is just as good in this game as he was in all the other games. I love all of his notes in the Piklopedia and on the treasure. And please, play Pikmin 4. I don't want to wait 10 years for Pikmin 5. Hey, hi, future me talking from the past here. Somehow I went through the entire Pikmin 4 segment without talking about the actual best part of Pikmin 4, which is Ochi. I mean, he's already a really good boy, I mean, just look at him. But he's also really cool. He's such an interesting addition to this kind of game. He's a mix between a captain that you can control and direct Pikmin with, but he himself is also a kind of Pikmin. He can pick up things, he can attack enemies, he can jump, he can do literally anything, and this game takes full advantage of everything that he can do. I really hope that Ochi comes back in future games, or something like him, because I really think they struck gold with him, and it would be such a shame for them to stop now. Yeah, this game is pretty much definitely my game of the year. And speaking of Game of the Year, we have another game to talk about. Anyway, next up is probably another game some people like. It's Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I know that this game's quite popular. I've played this game, actually. This game is insane. I actually cannot believe it exists. It feels like a dream. It feels like a game designer took a game out of their brain and just put it in real life. It is so dense and detailed and charming and impressive. This is just straight up one of the most impressive games I've ever played. I have put over 20 hours into this game. Yes, I have not beaten this game. I only put 20 hours in it, and those of you who have played it know that's not a lot. I feel like I have barely scratched the surface with Baldur's Gate 3, and I don't know if I'm ever going to see all of it. And I think that's okay. It's a bit too horny for me anyway. This is the game that every single RPG that gets made nowadays will be compared to. This is the new gold standard. And yeah, that's pretty impressive. Speaking of big games I haven't played as much of as I would have liked, there were a lot of big games this year, and I didn't play all of them. I'm sure they were very good, allegedly, but I haven't played them. So here is a list of games that I just simply either wasn't interested in or didn't get around to, but probably deserve to be on this video anyway. First up, Octopath Traveler 2. Apparently this game has a really good story. I saw a lot of people upset that this didn't even get nominated for Best Narrative in Game of the Year. I don't know anything about that, but I did like the Octopath Traveler 1, so I got no problem giving this game a shout as well. Next game, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Some of you probably noticed I didn't mention this game earlier. Listen, I just gotta be honest. I didn't like Breath of the Wild that much. I did not like the weapon durability system in that game, or the shrines. And frankly, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom kind of looks the exact same as that game. I'm sure there are new things. I'm sure it's pretty cool. I know that fans got a big kick out of it, but personally, I just didn't care enough to even play it. But I'm sure it's pretty good, so I'll give it a shout. Armored Core 6 from FromSoft. I didn't know that. I didn't know what Armored Core was until this year, until that game came out and everyone said it was really good. Is it good? Probably. I didn't play it, but it's from FromSoft. It's probably fine. Same goes for Lies of P. Not actually made by FromSoft, but it might as well have been. It's a Dark Souls-like. And listen, I'm sure Souls-likes are cool, but unless it's Star Wars, I'm not gonna play it until I've actually played through the Dark Souls games. And I haven't played much of any FromSoft game except for Elden Ring and like a little bit of Dark Souls 1 that you can find on my channel somewhere. Yeah, I'm sure it's good. I'm gonna get to it someday and be blown away, but for now, it's just gonna be here. And finally, this is the one I'm actually most upset that I haven't played yet. RoboCop Rogue City. I cannot believe I just said that. This is a apparently really good, not quite open world, but a really good first-person shooter with RPG elements. And I mean RPG as in like conversations and dialogue and skill trees and stuff like that. And I really wanted to play it, but it just couldn't quite happen this year. This is the game out of all of these I'm probably gonna get around to sooner rather than later. Alright, we're in the home stretch, sort of. I'm actually like halfway there, but let's not talk about that. First off, Bomb Rush CyberFunk. Did you play Jet Set Radio? Then you probably are gonna get a kick out of this game. I cannot stress this enough. It is literally just Jet Set Radio again. That's not a bad thing. It almost is, but it's not. It's not a bad thing. I do really like this game. And if you like Jet Set Radio, you probably will too. I don't even have that much to say about it because it really is just Jet Set Radio again. And you know what? I like Jet Set Radio, so fair enough. Next up, Sea of Stars. It's a Chrono Trigger-like RPG, but also with some Paper Mario / Mario and Luigi stuff thrown into the combat. It seems to me like just a pretty standard RPG, but it's made by the folks that made The Messenger, and I really like that game. And this game like carries over all of that game's charm, and I really dig it. It also has a pretty good soundtrack. Again, speaking of good music, and this might be the most controversial game on the list. Some of y'all are gonna get mad that I put this here and not other games. Starfield. Yeah, believe it or not, I actually like this game a lot. It's not a good game, but I love it anyway. It's as Bethesda RPG as you could possibly get, and in this day and age, that is a absolute blessing in my book. It just warms my heart to see the exact same engine that Bethesda has been using for like 20 years, and you get to see the same old bugs that have been plaguing Bethesda games for years and years, and honestly, none of them are game breaking, they're just really funny. And in general, there's just, I cannot explain it. I won't even try to do a good job of explaining it, but there's just something about Bethesda RPGs. I can't get enough of them. I will eat that shit up till the day I die. The one genuinely good thing I will give this game, it's got maybe one of the best soundtracks of the year, which is insane. If there was any award Starfield could have been nominated for, this is it. This is the nomination, because the music, it actually hard carries the game. I'm not even joking. It is insane how roaming the desert moons on a planet that are randomly generated is so boring, but then the music kicks in at the right time. It's something else, man. I really put in way too much time playing this game for some reason, and I honestly don't even regret it. Another game that I absolutely do not regret playing is El Paso Elsewhere. This is a supernatural one-way trip heavily inspired by the Max Payne games. You got the shoot dodge, you got the bullet time, you got the guy in the trench coat. It's all there. But it stands out in just a few ways. Yes, you do have essentially all of Max Payne's moveset, but the game itself, the enemies and the level design, it's more built like something like Quake or something, or Doom, like a old retro shooter. All the enemies are the type that instead of shooting guns at you, they will rush at you and try to kill you with their claws, or they will shoot big, slow energy orbs at you that you can pretty easily dodge. You wouldn't think Max Payne's gameplay would be a good fit for that, but it kind of works actually. I'm really impressed by it. It also expertly carries over the charisma that Max Payne has. There's only like 2 voice actors in this game, and they're both really good. I actually really like the story in this game. It's a weird story at first, but it's like kind of out there. But once you realize where the story is going, it actually becomes really good. Like I was really invested by the end about how it was gonna end. It also looks really good. It's very indie game looking, but it tries a lot of neat things with the art style and the symbol graphics, and it makes it look really cool. Last thing I'll say about this game is that it has one of the most unique soundtracks to maybe any game this year. This might be the first soundtrack I've ever heard in a video game that's so bad that it wraps around to becoming good again. I genuinely love it. It's so ridiculous, but it fits the game really well. It actually, when you're listening to it in game, it works really well. When you're listening to it in your car, it hits a little different. But whatever, El Paso Elsewhere was like one of the standout games for me. I really like the Max Payne games. I probably should mention this for a game later on. I'll probably talk about it more later, honestly. But yeah, I absolutely love the Max Payne games. Some of my favorite games of all time. And this honestly does a good job of paying homage to them, while also being its own thing. It's not a carbon copy. It really is trying something new, and I really appreciate it for that. Next game I want to talk about is Mosalina, another indie game, and this one is really interesting to me. This is a randomly generated puzzle game. Remember how I was talking earlier with Humanity that I don't really play puzzle games that often? Well, this one I actually really like because it is randomly generated. And what I mean by that is there are set level designs and patterns that you will see throughout this game, but every time you spawn in, it will give you new tools to mess around with and try to solve the puzzle with. And it's not always possible. There is a huge amount of randomness in this game, and you have to figure out how to do the thing by yourself. There is no guide you can look up. You have to play around with the toys the game gives you and try to make something work. And more often than not, you can. Not always. That's the blessing and curse of randomness. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. And the game really embraces this aspect of randomness. And I really like it. It's also just controls really nicely. I love how, like, any sort of object with like a slight incline, you could just scramble up it. It feels really nice, and it allows for a lot of really clutch plays that weren't intentional, but you're gonna pretend they were anyway. That's the kind of game this is. It makes you feel like a genius even though you solved the puzzle by complete accident. Next up is Corn Kids 64. And this game really shocked me. I could not believe how good this game was. It actually blew me away. And it's because it's such a simple game on the surface. It's just a nostalgic throwback to, old N64 platformers like Banjo-Kazooie, Super Mario 64. And I don't even usually like those kinds of games all that much, frankly, but this game, how do I put it? This game made me feel like a kid again. I had that same feeling of childlike wonder back when I was playing like the old SpongeBob games when I was like 3 years old. The world just feels so big. It feels like you can go anywhere. It feels like there's always new secrets to find. And it just made me feel really good. This is my favorite platformer of the year, I think. It pains me to say that somehow Pizza Tower didn't win that award. Best 2D platformer, sure, but there's just something about 3D platformers that really works for me. And this game is a good 3D platformer. I really love how this game controls and looks. The whole like filters and stuff of like trying to replicate what an N64 game looks like, it takes some getting used to, but it looks really nice in the end. It makes the game fit in this nice aesthetic, and that's not even getting into the actual animation and art design of this game is great. It is so freaking good. I love how much squash and stretch they put on the main guy. And like it almost reminds me more of like Jak and Daxter or something, but the actual controls are more reminiscent of sort of Banjo-Kazooie, but also got a little bit of like the Sonic homing attack thrown in there, and I really like it. For what it is, I think it's worth every penny. I could not have asked for a better game at that price, honestly. Next up, we got a little bit of a spicy one, and how not spicy it is. It's Spider-Man 2, and I really don't have much to say about it because it's just Spider-Man 1 again, but like a little bit worse, if you ask me. Like, I'm not a huge fan of how the story is. The writing feels a little bit worse for me. The combat doesn't feel as Spider-Man-y, but I don't really care because this game still has some of the best web swinging ever. It might be better than the other PS4 game, I'm not sure. But Spider-Man 2, it's just a fun game. Like they made the game fun. What can I say? The combat, it's not Spider-Man-y, but it's still really good. So yeah, that's all I really got to say about that. Another game I don't have a lot to talk about, but definitely need to include is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. What do you want me to say about this game? It's as simple as it gets. It's charming, it's nice, it's fun, it's Mario. This is one of the only games that I think genuinely anyone could play and enjoy. I'm not saying there's something for everyone, but everyone has something for this game, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to just not have, like, at least a bit of fun playing this game, especially in multiplayer. It's a good time. That's all I really gotta say about it. Now, next up is a game I almost decided not to include because it's early access, but I decided that even though it is early access, I have already gotten my money's worth out of this game. It's Lethal Company, the game that has taken the game industry by a storm by just being a really good, fun multiplayer game that's also really scary and also really funny. It's genuinely, it's simultaneously one of like the best horror games of the year and one of the best comedy games of the year. It makes really good use of sound design, specifically with voice chat. It's one of those games where the farther away you are from someone, the less you can hear them, the quieter they get, you have more echo on their voice and stuff like that. And it means that you're just walking around these tunnels by yourself, and suddenly you hear your friend's echoey screams through a hallway suddenly get cut off by some man-made horror beyond your comprehension. It's great. I love it. This is a true story. One time I was playing with some friends, and I told them that I was gonna go back into the building to double check something real quick. And the moment I stepped in, I immediately got. I got killed by something, my body was dragged away, but my friends didn't know that. One of them decided to go back in to check on me, and the other friend realized that I was dead, but there was no way he could tell my bud who was about to walk through the door. He walks through the door, he calls out my name, he looks around, turns a corner, and sees my flashlight on the ground, shining into a black hallway. My walkie-talkie sitting next to it. He picks up the walkie-talkie, and the other friend back on the ship is screaming at him to get the hell out of there because something is in there. He turns around to see the creature that killed me peering behind a corner. And then he got the hell out of there. This is the game that will let you recreate scenes from your favorite horror movies completely naturally and by accident. I honestly think Lethal Company is destined to be remembered as one of the best co-op games of all time, because it's both a legitimately good co-op game and a legitimately good horror game. The horror aspect is really well done, besides just the really good sound design of the game, the visuals, the creature design, the way that every creature has different levels of AI. Some of them are really advanced, some of them are dead simple. It makes it really interesting, and I also like the horror aspect of it, to where it's not a jump scare kind of game like most popular horror games are. It's way more, your death is either quick and silent or loud and prolonged, and it's wonderful like that. This is going to go down in history as one of the best multiplayer co-op games of all time, sitting right there next to like Left 4 Dead and other games like that. It's that good. Even though it's in early access, it's not even done yet. The developers have so much more planned for this game, but it's like $10, and the game right now is well worth that price. Despite that, it's still not the best horror game of the year, and we've had a lot of really good ones this year, but simply put, I don't think any of them hold a candle to my beloved Alan Wake 2. This is a sequel to a long-forgotten game from the 360 era, made by Remedy, and it is wonderful. It is breathtaking in how weird and cool it is at the same time. It's a genuinely good horror game. I really like the atmosphere and eerie vibes and like the story of it too. The game has some of the most beautiful imagery I think I've seen from this generation of gaming, if not ever. But it's also, despite being a horror game, it's also really goofy. It knows how to have fun with itself. It has maybe one of the most bizarre moments in any video game ever with the Herald of Darkness part. It's the most surreal 15 minutes you'll ever experience in your entire life, and I honestly recommend the game for that one moment alone. And yet, it's also, at the same time, it's a good survival horror game. It has good resource management, it has spooky scares, it has enemies that you can try to sneak past, but then you get chased, and then you're trying to frantically run away. It also has one of the most interesting stories in any video game ever at this point. It's very meta. It's extremely meta, actually. They put the lead writer in the game as, like, two different characters, and I don't understand how it works, but it just does work. It's a love letter to all of Remedy's previous games, but you don't really need to play them to get it. I mean, maybe Alan Wake 1. That's the only drawback to this game, is that you probably should play at least that game. Preferably, I think you should play every game Remedy has made before playing Alan Wake 2, because it calls back to all of them. You might take that as a criticism. For me, it just works really well because I have played every single one, including Max Payne, and this is especially a wonderful tribute to the Max Payne games. Unfortunately, very recently, James McCaffrey, the voice of Max Payne, and also Alex Casey in Alan Wake 2, he passed away recently, and this is his last game, and for a last game, it's maybe the most perfect last voice role he could have. A parody of himself, giving him one last chance to be that character that he helped create, a character that defined the way that stories are told in video games. It's just wonderful. I love Alan Wake 2. Pikmin 4 was always going to win my game of the year, but if that game didn't exist this year, I really think Alan Wake 2 would win it, and it honestly wouldn't even be close. I don't even really know if anything I just said about this game makes sense to someone who hasn't played it, but it's just how I feel. This game makes me feel so many different emotions. There's at least a couple moments in this game that shook me to my core, for better and for worse, and I will never forget it because of that. It is one of the most unique games of the year, and you're doing a disservice to yourself for not playing it. Alright, that was a lot. Let's calm down with something a little more nice. We got Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, and honestly, I have a lot to say about this game because, as some of you might know, I do like the first Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl game. It's fun, and that's about all it has going for it. It's not very well made. It has very jank animation and physics. It didn't have voice acting when it launched. It does now, which I really appreciate, and it got DLC and items and all that. It is a fun game, but as a product, it's lacking a lot. There's like literally zero single player content, and I never had the online servers work. The only value I got out of that game was having friends come over and play it, and it was really fun while we were doing that, but that's all I was able to get for it. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 fixes almost every problem the first game had. It's polished more. It still has some jank to it, but honestly, I've just come to love that at this point. It is seriously really well made. I love the animations to it. This is the best some of these characters have looked ever in 3D as far as I'm concerned. I don't even think it's like there's characters like Rocco and the Angry Beavers and shit like that, and like I don't even think they've ever been in 3D, and they look so good in this game. The animation across the board is really good, but it's not just the animation. The actual gameplay feels so much more refined in this game than the first game. Every character genuinely feels super unique to play. They all have very different movesets, and it's just a very... The movesets themselves are super interesting. They're different not just from each other from within the game, but also just in general. These are some of the most interesting characters I've seen in any like platform fighting game. I want to give a specific shout out to the Angry Beavers specifically because they are insane to me. They're a duo that you can switch between on the fly, and they have slightly different movesets when you switch between them. That's already pretty cool, but they have other moves where they summon the other beaver to do it's almost like a Marvel vs. Capcom assist sort of thing, and it's really cool. That by itself is already fairly unique for a platform fighter, but then throw in the fact that you can switch to another beaver while they're out doing their assist attack, and you fluidly instantly switch that other beaver exactly where they are. That by itself opens up so much potential for these characters. I really want to see what people can do with them because they are super interesting, and every character in this game is like that. Yeah, some of them they take more inspiration from certain other fighting game characters than others, but they're all really fun and different, and I really appreciate it. I think the game is actually pretty well balanced to where I could see any character winning like a major tournament or whatever. Not to mention, this game actually has functional online, and it actually works really well. It works even better than actual Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Don't know how that happened, but I'm gonna take it. And besides that, they got a whole ass single player roguelike campaign. This is also one of the most interesting things about this game. It has a roguelike campaign. It takes inspiration from classic arcade modes from other fighting games, but it adds roguelite elements to it where you can get upgrades and then you can fight bosses and hordes of enemies that aren't just the other fighting game characters. it's actually really well made. Maybe one of the best single player fighting game experiences ever. And I'm saying that in the same video where I just gushed about Street Fighter 6's amazing single player content. So yeah, a good year for fighting games, I think. Speaking of fighting, I got one last game I want to talk about in this video. And it's a mouthful, like not as much as the other games, but it's fucking Like a Dragon Gaiden: The Man Who Erased His Name. What a name. It's like they were trying to get the series to fail again. This is a weird game for me to end on because honestly, I don't have a lot to say. Because if you like the Yakuza games, you were probably going to get this game anyway. And if you don't like the Yakuza games, I don't know how I could recommend it because it's meant to be a follow-up to a whole series, and it has callbacks to basically every single game that came before it, and I just can't in good faith recommend that to someone who hasn't played the other games. I'd absolutely recommend playing the Yakuza / Like a Dragon games. They are incredible, one of my favorite game series of all time at this point. But you know, maybe start with like Yakuza 0 or something. So for what this is a really good, really fun game. I like the new karaoke songs specifically. They're quite fun. It's a nice Christmas theme, which I guess is fitting. And I guess that's it. That's all I really wanted to talk about for this video. I have to ask the question then, is this the best year for games ever? Of all time? Honestly, it's kind of a weird question when you consider everything else. There we go. Man, that looks like trash. Whatever. So 2023 was a pretty good year for games. I think I've demonstrated that enough by now. But I'm less sure if it was a good year for gaming, you know? Like, it felt like every day this year there would be news about mass layoffs for some big company, or illegal hacks leaking private information from developers, or, you know, just AI, like, in general, that whole thing. I don't know, it just feels weird because, like, I really like video games. I think they are really cool, and it just feels like more and more nowadays we're getting disconnected from what makes them so cool. You're seeing both the games and the people making them turned into machines by big corporations that just exist to make them money. I know this isn't an issue like exclusive to video games, and it is in fact much bigger than I will ever be prepared to handle. But it doesn't make it suck any less. 2023 was a great year for games, and I don't want it to be the last. Oh, face reveal, by the way. Ow. So I know this is not the time or place to be having this conversation, but thank you, in short. I had a lot I wanted to talk about after the last year, and it's great to be back, even though that was quite a way to be back. Videos should be coming out again relatively weekly-ish, hopefully. I don't know for sure yet, but I'm back, at least for now. So that's all I really wanted to say at the moment. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to be kind to other people, and goodbye.